Welcome to this short overview of blended learning at Stellenbosch University. I'm JP Bosman, and in the short video overview we'll take you through some of the basic ideas, principles and also practical suggestions around blended learning at Stellenbosch University. The first question many people ask is, why do we blend? Why create blended learning? There's a very important report of the US Department of Education in 2010 that did a study of mega study of a lot of research on which is better, face-to-face, fully online or blended. And what they came up with is that face-to-face always is good, I guess, but in many instances an online learning experience or environment can actually be better than face-to-face. But what they found to be the best type of learning environment or structured learning type is blended learning. What the report also said is that where collaborative or instructor-led activities were there, in other words, where there was interaction between people, it led to the best learning, over and against type of independent learning where you just have somebody do their own thing on their own, individual type learning. Also, what seemed wonderful was if learners can have control over the interaction with the media and the stuff that they have to deal with online or in class. Prompting learner reflection was so powerful, the study found. Eventually, it actually boils down to the expansion of learning time, so giving more opportunity to engage with the materials. And often it just meant that there was a change in the curriculum and the pedagogy. People started thinking, how can I do this better? How can I design better for learning? And what the study also says is that the medium is not a silver bullet. So something like a Moodle or the fact that you have a blended learning or call something blended learning isn't necessarily going to be that it's automatically good. There needs to be some thinking that has to go into this blend and how you do it. But the fact is, if we do it right, we can get much further with a blended learning approach. Talking about blended learning, and here one can have a whole course about it, but just the basics of this is the following. Very importantly, the technology doesn't come first. So the learning and teaching outcomes come first. We first need to interrogate those and see, are they still what we want to achieve? Are they authentic? Do they still interest students? Do they engage? With that, we can look at the type of materials we have. Is the textbook maybe outdated? Are we going to use open educational resources? And so you build basically a new puzzle. Two tools that have helped us a lot over the last few months that we've come to know is, first of all, this outcome and technology tools matrix, and I'll show that now, as well as Mark Morton's blended learning planner. It's just a start in this process. Let me show you those very quickly. So first of all, we have this learning outcomes and technology tools matrix, which is enabled by this website. And the thing I just wanted to point your attention to is that the potential uses of technologies in this way of thinking comes last. So firstly, it's the desired learning outcome. In other words, the what. What do I want to achieve? Is it digital literacy, ethical practice, preparation for success? Then the why question, the rationale. Why do we want to do this? Because we need a 21st century graduate. Because we want to help students manage information overload. Then comes the how. What are the activities that we are going to build to basically effect this desired learning outcomes? And there we come to things like we're going to do a multidimensional evaluation, we're going to share and review online resources, we're going to connect with outside expert communities and so forth. And only the last step is to ask, but what potential of technologies are out there that we can use to do this in the best way possible? And so this list goes on, and this is a wonderful way, and you can go to that website address, print this out and use this for your own thinking. Basically a bit of renewal as well in your thinking. Alright, so that is the matrix. Now we are going to have a look at Morton's template for blended. So at the provided link you will have this Word document that you can download and also print out and work with. And this is almost like a lesson planner. What I like about this template is that it forces one to again start with the learning outcome, So first of all, in this template, the question is asked, what should students be able to do? And one fills that in. The second question is, what is the learning activity? How am I going to plan for this to happen? And here, you decide, what am I going to do online in the learning management system, Moodle, or some other web-based tool? And what am I going to do offline, in the classroom, other types of physical activities? Also important here is the assessment that one immediately asks, how is it going to be assessed? So the alignment of assessment to outcomes. And again, is this formative? And what am I going to do online? Is it summative? And what am I going to do online or offline? And I like these questions because these are real life questions. How many hours do I think will it take to develop this learning activity? So planning, and also afterwards saying it took so long, etc. Will it take less time to develop it if you use it again? How about the assessments? Is this a new learning activity? Have you maybe decreased the workload for students elsewhere and maybe for yourself? So this is the template that we can say, start with this together with the tools and start thinking new about your pedagogy. So download this template and start working with that. So back to the idea of blended learning. It really is not about Moodle, or about any tool for that matter. The learning management system in Moodle is important, but it's not just about that. It's about creating and using a blended learning ecosystem of tools that is available. What do I mean with Moodle then? What is the idea of Moodle? What do we use it for? Now I want to use this metaphor of Moodle as a workbench. And we have to get away from this idea that technology is that we are going to learn from technology, or the way we use technology. We must start thinking about how are we going to learn or have students learn with technology. And so Moodle and other tools become thinking tools. We think of the concept of tool-mediated learning. It's not about the tool, it's how it mediates the learning. And Moodle becomes an axle around which a lot of things come together, the blend. It's like a glue that keeps everything together. It's a platform from which to do certain things. It's part of a learning ecosystem. The radios I have there is an interesting story about John C.D. Brown, who was approached by Xerox, and I got this story from the University of Johannesburg, so thank you to them, describing how John C.D. Brown, this expert in online learning, was approached by Xerox to create training material for their technicians who work on basically the photocopying machines. And after a long study, he said, no, I'm going to send sociologists in. So he sent some social scientists into the workplace and found out how do these technicians actually learn. And long story short, they came up with the best solution was to give everyone a two-way radio, because they found out that the junior and senior technicians start talking to each other. It becomes like this narrative that is being told around how to fix a photocopying machine. And so the tools that were implemented at the end was much simpler because it met the need, met the desired learning outcome, as we've been saying. And he saved Xerox millions of dollars. So it's just an interesting story about how tools can be understood. But let's look at Moodle. So if we say Moodle is a workbench, what are the kind of learning activities that we want Moodle to be able to facilitate? We could say some of the tools we want to use to measure or to assess, for example. For some of the tools we would like students to use them to think, to calculate. Some of the tools we have in the workbench is for giving feedback, which is very important and very powerful around assessment. Some tools are there to scaffold information and knowledge, or to produce knowledge. For example, when students write collaboratively. Some tools are there to do collaboration, to do peer instruction, peer assessment, for example. And some tools are there to express yourself and also to reflect, which we've already heard is such an important part of teaching and learning. Now I know you were going to ask about the hammer. That one I leave up to you. So Moodle as a workbench. The next image is important not to scare anybody, but really to show how a learning ecosystem can look like. What are all the potential things that we can put into this blend? And I'm shortly just going to talk about each of these aspects. So just note that the pie is divided into 5 sections. So section 1 would be all issues around content and discovery. 2 is around aspects of learning, feedback. 2 is about assessment and feedback. 3, communication and dialogue. 4, collaboration and production. 5 is around the classroom, be it physical or virtual. And the 6th one is on the next slide, which is about creating a personal learning environment. And one can see that we have certain institutional tools that we can use. Some of the tools are in the cloud, on the internet, web-based tools, and we must also think about the outer layer, which are the mobile-enabled tools, which are getting stronger and more important. So let's have a quick look at each of these segments. First of all, content and discovery. Moodle can do that very easily, but there are also other ways. Open educational resources, maybe Google Docs, maybe blogs, Wikispaces, creating CMAPs, YouTube, etc. It's very easy to pull in rich and wonderful content that students can discover and can use in their learning. The second focus is on assessment and feedback. And this is where we can do even better. We should think of assessment for learning. Not necessarily just assessment of learning, but assessment as a powerful learning tool. And it's been proven in the in Science magazine or Science journal, for example, that to have students do retrieval, in other words, make them write tests often on certain material, does more to long-term recall and learning than having more study time, for example. So assessment and the giving of feedback, timeous feedback, is of the essence. Third is communicate and dialogue. How easy it is for you to create communication with or between your students. How are they going to talk together? How are we going to communicate, etc. The fourth one is collaboration and production, and this is something that is new often, is how do we get students to work together in groups? How do they write together? How do they plan together? These are 21st century graduate attribute skills, for example, and Moodle and other tools can afford us basically to use them to get to these outcomes, to get to these activities. And then when we get to the classroom, be it physical or virtual, what can we do to create more engagement in the class? How can we flip the classroom? And there we've got classroom technologies. We can use Moodle in class. We can make podcasts. We can link through streaming or with link. We can collaborate on documents. We can, for example, use the clicker system that is available within Moodle. So those would be all the different aspects that we can start looking at to renew our own practice and to come and to get a little bit further. The sixth one is about the personal learning environment, and this is something quite new, but something that we have to develop. So each student and also each academic lecturer should start looking at building their own personal learning environment. And this could be, for example, how to use your tablet as part of that, how to use things like Google Drive or Office 360, how to use Dropbox, Share Plus, how to build out e-portfolios, like, for example, Mahara, that's integrated into Moodle. How do I make notes in class? How do I deliver or consume podcasts? How do I discover content? How do you use clickers, CMAP tools, and the list can grow. How one design that personal learning environment is up to everybody, but I think that's also something to think about. Right, so I guess the question now is, now I know that blended learning is important. I have a good idea of what the lie of the land is, where it fits in, and what I can start doing around all the different aspects of learning. Now the question is, where do I start? And I would like to say that, first of all, start by thinking. Think something new. Think, how can I be brave? How can I design something that's a bit new and choose something that you've not done before? The second one is students. I think if we ask the students what will work for them, and then work with them to design certain new ways of doing and learning activities, that can also be a start. Talk to your students, ask them. How do we create rich learning experiences? So one might even have current exercises that can simply be enriched even more. We must experiment. We must be scholarly. We must look at our own practice and see what works, what doesn't work, and be tweaking the whole time. We talk about iterative design, looking at something, implementing it, looking if it works, and then doing it a little bit better next time. And scaffold, start small and build it from there. It really is about how do we think about designing for learning. And this is a bigger concept that CTL also works with. and that all who've been to PREDAC knows about. How do we create environments where learning can take place?